For most of our 8-year marriage, I tried very hard to be the understanding husband. My wife, Brittany, had a male best friend named Jason, and according to her, their friendship was completely harmless. They had met in college, stayed close through different relationships, and eventually remained part of each other's lives long after graduation. When Brittany and I first started dating, I honestly didn't think much about it. Everyone has friends. Everyone has a past. I believed trust was essential in a marriage, so I welcomed Jason into our lives without complaint. But as the years passed, I began noticing things that made me uncomfortable. Jason somehow knew private details about our marriage that I never shared. He called Brittany late at night whenever he wanted. If we had an argument, she talked to him before talking to me. Whenever I expressed concern, Brittany dismissed me immediately and accused me of being insecure. Eventually, I stopped bringing it up because every conversation ended the same way. The problem wasn't that Jason existed. The problem was that Brittany treated him differently from everyone else. She canceled plans with me to help him. She answered his calls during our dates. She defended him more passionately than she defended our marriage. Whenever friends joked that Jason acted more like her partner than her husband, Brittany laughed instead of correcting them. Over time, those little moments started adding up. I wasn't jealous of Jason's friendship. I was tired of constantly feeling like I came second in my own marriage. The situation became even more frustrating because everyone around us seemed to notice it. My parents noticed. Her parents noticed. Even mutual friends quietly asked if everything was okay. Yet Brittany acted like I was the only person with concerns. Every time I tried explaining how hurtful it felt, she rolled her eyes and repeated the same phrase. Jason isn't going anywhere. Looking back, that sentence should have warned me about everything that was coming. The breaking point arrived during Brittany's 34th birthday party. She wanted something big, so we rented a beautiful lakeside venue and invited nearly 60 guests. The atmosphere looked perfect. String lights reflected off the water. Music drifted through the evening air. Friends laughed around decorated tables, while servers carried drinks and appetizers through the crowd. From the outside, it looked like a celebration of a happy marriage. But all night, I watched Brittany and Jason act like they were the center of their own private world. They shared inside jokes nobody understood. They disappeared for long conversations. They stood shoulder to shoulder in nearly every photo. At one point, a guest actually mistook Jason for Brittany's husband. Instead of correcting him immediately, Brittany laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. The guest eventually apologized to me, but the damage was already done. Something inside me finally reached its limit. Later that evening, after dinner was finished and most guests had gathered around the patio area overlooking the lake, I made a decision. I wasn't interested in screaming or causing a scene. I simply wanted honesty. For years, I had been told my concerns were unreasonable. For years, I had been asked to ignore what was happening right in front of me. So I stood up calmly, tapped my glass lightly, and got everyone's attention. The conversation slowly faded. Brittany smiled at me, probably assuming I was about to make a birthday toast. Instead, I looked directly at her and asked one simple question. Brittany, if you had to choose between our marriage and your friendship with Jason, which one would you choose? The crowd instantly became silent. Even the music suddenly seemed quieter. Every face turned toward Brittany, waiting for her answer. At first, Brittany stared at me in disbelief. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an embarrassed laugh. A confident, mocking laugh that immediately made several guests uncomfortable. She wrapped her arm around Jason's shoulder and looked directly into my eyes. Seriously, she said. That's your question? More laughter escaped her lips before she shook her head. Then she delivered the sentence that changed everything. You're temporary. He's forever. The words hit the crowd like a punch. Several people gasped. One woman covered her mouth. Jason looked uncomfortable immediately, but Brittany seemed proud of herself. She smiled as if she had just won an argument. The cruelest part wasn't what she said. It was how easily she said it. Like our marriage meant so little that publicly humiliating me felt completely acceptable. Everyone waited for my reaction. They expected anger. They expected shouting. Instead, I simply sat back down and remained silent. My silence confused Brittany more than any argument ever could. She kept smiling for a few seconds, waiting for me to respond. When I didn't, uncertainty slowly appeared on her face. Around us, guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody seemed interested in celebrating. The atmosphere had completely changed. Brittany tried making another joke, but it fell flat. That's when someone unexpected stood up from her chair. Across the patio sat Chloe, Brittany's closest female friend. Chloe was beautiful, confident, and usually the life of every gathering. She had known Brittany almost as long as Jason had. For years, she defended Brittany whenever disagreements happened. If anyone was going to support her tonight, it should have been Chloe. Brittany even smiled when she saw her stand up. "Come on, Chloe," she said confidently. "Tell Ethan he's being ridiculous." But Chloe wasn't smiling. Instead, Chloe folded her arms and looked directly at Brittany with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment. The kind of disappointment that only comes from watching someone make the same mistake too many times. "No," Chloe said quietly. The single word immediately grabbed everyone's attention. Brittany's smile faded. Jason straightened in his chair. Chloe took a deep breath before continuing. "Actually, I think Ethan deserves the truth." The tension became unbearable. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even Brittany seemed frozen. "For years," Chloe continued, "I've listened to you complain about your husband while defending Jason no matter what he does. I've watched you prioritize him over your marriage again and again. Every time Ethan tried to tell you he was hurting, you treated him like the problem instead of listening." Brittany's face immediately lost color. "Chloe, stop," Brittany whispered. Her voice shook noticeably now. But Chloe wasn't finished. Years of frustration were finally pouring out. "No," she replied firmly. "You need to hear this." Then she turned toward the crowd. "Most of you don't know this, but Brittany tells Jason things she refuses to discuss with her own husband. She calls him first when something good happens. She calls him first when something bad happens. She treats him like her emotional partner while expecting Ethan to quietly accept it." Several guests looked stunned. Others nodded slowly, as if they had suspected something similar. Jason stared at the floor. Brittany looked completely panicked. For the first time all evening, she seemed to realize she wasn't controlling the situation anymore. The attention she loved so much had suddenly become something terrifying. Then Chloe revealed the secret that shattered the room. "Last month," she said, "Brittany told me she keeps Ethan because he's safe and dependable, but Jason is the person she actually feels excited about." Complete silence followed. The entire crowd froze. Brittany looked horrified. Jason's face turned bright red. Several people exchanged shocked looks. One guest actually whispered, "Oh my God." Brittany immediately started shaking her head. "That's not what I meant," she said desperately. But nobody believed her. The truth was already out. Every strange interaction, every uncomfortable moment, every concern I had spent years questioning suddenly made perfect sense. Brittany looked at me with tears forming in her eyes. For the first time that night, she wasn't confident. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't acting superior. She looked scared. I slowly stood up and looked around the silent crowd. Then I looked directly at Brittany. "Thank you," I said calmly. She blinked in confusion. "For what?" she whispered. I nodded toward Chloe, for finally answering the question honestly. Tears rolled down Brittany's face immediately. "Ethan, please," she begged. "I didn't mean it like that." But the damage was already done. The truth had escaped, and no amount of excuses could force it back. For years, Brittany treated my patience like weakness and my loyalty like something that would always be there no matter how badly she behaved. Tonight, she finally understood how wrong she was. I quietly picked up my jacket and walked toward the exit. Nobody tried stopping me. Behind me, the party remained silent. And as I stepped into the night air, I realized something important. The husband she called temporary had been the only permanent person in her life all along.